The Amazon is burning. Every day, more than 2,000 hectares of rainforest are illegally destroyed, an area 6 times the size of New York's Central Park.
The forest is only preserved around the village. Beyond that, everything has been destroyed.
Mafia-like businesses are driving whole tribes out of the forests they live in. There's no rule of law, only the law of the jungle.
Those guys are very connected. They can threaten us, they can harm us, so we need to be more careful.
The forest is destroyed primarily to make way for illegal grazing land for cattle raised for meat and leather, for example. These commodities reach the world market via convoluted supply chains. We followed the trail of these illegal goods from deep inside the Brazilian rainforest all the way to Germany. We talked to politicians and industry representatives, met environmental activists, journalists, and dubious business owners in the Amazon. Again and again, various individuals and groups hindered our investigation. Over time, we started to suspect something shocking. Do products linked to illegal deforestation in the Amazon end up in German luxury cars? Every year in September, Munich hosts the International Motor Show Germany, one of the largest mobility trade fairs in the world. This is where our research into the industry's involvement in international environmental crimes in the rainforest began. Ad banners were everywhere. These days, businesses, including automakers, pay a lot of lip service to e-mobility, climate protection, and resource conservation. Sustainability has become a buzzword. But in fact, most of the visitors here weren't that interested.
Do you care about sustainability?
Not really.
It's not that important?
Resources have to come from somewhere. And what is sustainability anyway?
It's an attitude top executives in the German car industry seem to share. Protecting the environment costs money, and there's growing competition from China. Only 1 in 3 executives worry about environmental concerns. That's the sobering conclusion of an international study.
We are looking at the issue. Could it be more of a priority? Yes. But it requires capital and raises the question of where to invest.
We started seeing hints that German automakers don't look too closely at where materials come from, especially the leather used in luxury car interiors. Our search for answers first took us to the east coast of the US. We arranged to meet Alexander von Bismarck, a leading figure in the fight against illegal deforestation. We met him in his favorite place, Rock Creek Park in Washington, D.C. The German-American environmental activist has an interesting background. He's a former U.S. Marine who became an undercover investigator looking into illegal deforestation in Asia and Africa. The real criminals, he told us, are not the people on the ground in the Amazon.
The question is, where does the money come from? Where's the pressure coming from? I soon found out that it often comes from our countries.
Today, von Bismarck is director of the Environmental Investigation Agency, an international organization fighting climate and environmental crime. Using state-of-the-art technology, he and his team are dedicated to exposing the operations perpetrating these offenses. The EIA says huge profits are being made not only with wood, gold, and diamonds, but above all with illegal grazing land for cattle. In other words, with products such as meat, milk, and leather, which end up on the international market.
It's important to understand that large-scale criminal activity in the Amazon is causing us to lose the forest. And the tragedy is that we, people who don't want to be involved, are in fact bankrolling these crimes.
It's a gigantic market. Every year, Brazil exports around 500,000 tons of cowhide, almost half of which goes to the international auto industry. It's estimated that some 50 to 60 million cattle are required to meet the annual demand for leather upholstery in cars. That's around 300 square kilometers of cowhide, an area bigger than the city of Frankfurt. These huge profits make the Amazon a hub of criminal activity. And those wanting to shed some light are putting themselves in danger.
If you want to follow the money, you have to do a lot of research, including undercover work, and process a lot of data. We use innovative technologies and other methods to trace what's happening. Unfortunately, this research is incredibly dangerous, especially for locals defending the forests. The struggle on the ground is led by indigenous peoples who are defending their forest and their future.
Despite the risks, we continued our journey, heading to ground zero of the problem, Brazil. Von Bismarck and his team promised to keep up their research back in Washington and help us when they could. Our first stop was Sao Paulo, the economic capital of South America. There we met journalist Isabel Harari. She works for Reporter Brazil, an association of investigative journalists, and has been doing her own research in the rainforest.
When I talk about the destruction of the Amazon and the investigative work that Reporter Brazil do, looking at the supply chain, it's fundamental to be careful. We are talking about a lot of money and a lot of interests behind.
Isabel is currently working with a team making a film about the murder of investigative journalist Dom Phillips. Phillips was exposing environmental crimes in the Amazon when he was shot dead on a boat in the jungle in 2022.
Don was really keen on safety, so he wasn't reckless. When you're reporting in the Amazon, illegal deforestation, illegal mining, illegal logging, it's dangerous just to be there.
Do you have any advice what we should be careful about when we are there?
Yes, there's always someone listening, so beware of that.
Okay.
Isabel put us in touch with a colleague who comes from the region and knows his way around.
So now we need to
We then made our way to the Amazon, a massive area that's almost twice the size of the EU. At the airport of the regional capital Marabá, we met Yuri, Isabel's colleague.
Hey, Yuri. Good to see you. How are you? How was the flight? Good, good. How's everything here in Pará?
From here we plan to drive to Apitarewa, a remote region deep in the rainforest. Yuri estimated we'd need almost 2 days for the journey, done by off-road vehicle, boat, and on foot. Illegal deforestation in Apitarewa is said to have become particularly dramatic in recent years. We wanted to find out who's behind it. What we saw en route was not how we had pictured the Amazon. We saw cattle pastures everywhere and hardly any jungle.
Probably during the entire trip we will not see too much rainforest as we thought when we were kids, you know. The biome here changed a lot. We're gonna see a lot of cattle ranchers, farms, and sometimes mines. So the Amazon changed a lot during the past decades.
And that change shows no sign of stopping. Again and again we saw evidence of slash and burn agriculture, scorched trees and charred stumps. After about 6 hours of driving, we arrived in São Felix, the end of the road. Yuri found a guide willing to take us up the Xingu River to Apitarewa.
There's our boat.
Which one?
With the red roof right there.
The indigenous Paracana people of Apitarewa live from the forest, and its destruction threatens their livelihood. Criminal farmers even menace them in their own villages. The tribal leaders were ready to welcome us nonetheless.
You need to gain that trust to go in there. It's a bit of honor for us. It means that we have that trust, so it's good.
The Xingu is one of the main rivers in the Amazon. Its banks are home to numerous indigenous communities. We made slower progress than we'd hoped. The region is currently experiencing unprecedented drought. Our guide was forced to navigate carefully to avoid getting stuck.
Are we going to enter abattoirs soon now?
Yeah, I believe in 10 or 15 minutes we can see it will be the beginning of the abattoir territory in our right side.
We finally reached our destination after 8 hours. Until the 1970s, the Paracana were completely isolated. Today they live in a protected area as large as the Saarland region in Germany. Economic exploitation is prohibited, and the Paracana are trying to maintain their traditional way of life. But criminal businesses are penetrating deeper and deeper into their territory. The tribal leader had just taken in some people fleeing neighboring villages after they had been threatened by armed men. But they weren't safe here either.
We have been getting threats for a long time, but it's getting worse. These days, the intimidations are constant.
Clashes in the forest have become frequent.
We are hunters. We go into the woods and hunt mainly deer and wild boar. But it's become more difficult due to the foreigners coming to our lands. Now that these invaders are here, we must travel longer and longer distances to hunt.
Iori invited us to accompany the hunters into the jungle. He said they could best explain what worsening deforestation means for the Paracana people.
In the past, we always had enough. We only take as much of the forest as we need. Since the white people have been taking the forest away from us, we sometimes must travel for days.
While the hunters continued deeper into the jungle, we returned to the village to meet Wenatoa Paracana. She's the first female tribal leader. She told us some of the men have secretly started doing business with the criminals. That's why the village had decided to put a woman in charge. She's considered incorruptible.
For us, Paracana, the forest is our life, our mother, our father, our home. It's our future. It's a paradise for our children. If it continues to be destroyed, it will soon be gone forever. There will be no more of the pure air we need to breathe. Not only for us here in the forest, but also for white people, for the whole world.
Wenatoa is ready to fight for the forest. Although the Paracana have the law on their side, the jungle's destruction remains unchecked.
The laws made by white people don't seem to be working. I wonder if the people who buy cattle from here even think about what they are doing. They are also complicit in the destruction of our forests in Apitarewa. They buy the products from these invaders and finance what they're doing.
But who are these people destroying the forest to make way for their herds of cattle? Are they working for international corporations? We met up with Alexander von Bismarck again. His colleagues had been able to gather some information about these illegal businesses. Team leader Rick Jacobson had worked his way through gigantic amounts of data, including documents from local authorities, financial databases, and aerial photographs. He confirmed what the Paracana have long said: illegal profiteers are destroying the local forest at a rapid pace.
You can see Apitarewa as the largest area of deforestation in the entire Brazilian Amazon. And you may have noticed an acceleration just in the last few years.
Exactly, especially in this area here.
Skyrocketing of deforestation. And we know from satellite analysis that most of that deforested land is being converted into pasture. And what you can see here very clearly are hundreds of cows. And you could literally count the cows, right?
Using satellite images, photo analysis, and statistical evaluations, the team was able to establish how the criminals proceed.
What our investigation found is that cattle are often transferred between multiple farms during the course of their life before they're sold for slaughter. That makes it very difficult to link the illegal deforestation where cows may have been raised with the slaughterhouse.
Rick calls the system cattle laundering because it works in a similar way to money laundering. All traces of illegal dealings are erased. He explained that a cow raised on a legally cleared land is sold to a farm outside the area. That farm then legally sells the animal to international corporations. From there, the products made from the animals, like meat, milk, and leather, end up on the global market. Consumers in Germany, at the far end of the supply chain, are therefore unwittingly contributing to deforestation in the Amazon.
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence that it's systemic, and the Amazon has been the growth region for the Brazilian cattle industry for more than a decade. So all across the Amazon, we've seen slaughterhouses, leather tanneries popping up right in the heart of where the deforestation is happening.
The analysis, employing innovative research methods, provided even more detail, like identifying numerous suspicious individuals.
We've been collecting and using very large data sets of cattle transport permits, which has been vital, been essential to piecing together parts of these supply chains. We've also connected these data sets with deforestation data sets, with rural property data sets that show who owns which property.
The trail leads to several large farms, which, according to the register, belong to Cesar N. and his relatives, a well-known local family. We traveled back to the Amazon to find out who's buying the family's goods, and whether there really are connections to German automakers. We meet up with Yuri again, who had bad news. He said the security situation had deteriorated since our last visit. He showed us recent footage shot by security forces. Attempts to disarm criminals and crack down on illegal livestock farming in the area had resulted in clashes with the police, during which several farmers and security guards were injured.
This is one of the tricky things too when you are investigating something here in the Amazon, anything connected to illegality.
The footage also shows an influential lawyer who works for the farmers filming the action.
This lawyer told me that he owns his own airplane to visit the areas, to visit the farms of his clients. So it shows how profitable this business are.
Our research started to make some waves. The same lawyer began railing against us on social media, warning his followers about us, and claiming we wanted to harm the country.
I know they'll be coming soon, and I've taken a closer look at what they're doing. They're making fun of our homeland. They use image sequences to manipulate opinion. They're violating Brazil's sovereignty.
Those guys are very connected, so any news, any information, they spread very fast. You know, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. If you try doing any kind of interview with a farmer, they probably will say no. If they just say no, it's good for us, because right now, maybe they can do something worse than just say no. No, they can threaten us, they can do anything to harm us, so we need to be more careful.
But Yuri also had some good news. He'd managed to obtain confidential documents from the public prosecutor's office in Marabá. In them, he repeatedly came across a familiar name, Cesar N. We got in touch with the investigators in Marabá, the regional capital. Prosecutor Igor Spindola agreed to talk to us. He said the scale of the problem is vast. In Apitarewa alone, the territory of the Paracaná, investigators have identified some 80 suspects and more than 60,000 suspected illegal cattle.
Foi muito trabalhoso.
It was a lot of work. It was a vast amount of data, and this is a large swath of land. We employed complex methods and new programs, including AI, to filter all the data and evaluate it.
The prosecutor said former President Jair Bolsonaro had downright boycotted the investigation. During his time in office, the far-right politician had promoted the rainforest's commercial exploitation. Now, under leftist President Lula da Silva, the government has changed tack. The EU is also exerting increasing pressure. But on the ground, it's still a battle of David versus Goliath.
Over time, these businesses funnel more and more money into the region. Their owners soon move up the social ladder. It doesn't take much. They don't have to buy the land. They just occupy it and multiply their wealth quickly. And they get closer and closer to political power.
But in a way, it is some kind of organized crime, no?
It's organized crime. We treat it this way legally.
Mafia-like activity in the middle of the Amazon, and a judicial apparatus that's struggling to cope. We set out to contact Cesar N., the farmer whose name appears in the public prosecutor's files, and who had been identified by the researchers back in Washington.
You want to film this one?
We located his farm quickly, using geo-coordinates. We wanted to find out who's buying his cattle, which is suspected to be illegal. But we were stopped in our tracks. The farmer's land is in the middle of an especially dangerous part of the rainforest, an area that had seen days of unrest. We decided to try another approach. We had been contacted by someone in the provincial town of Tucumã, said to have inside information.
Let's try.
The man is said to be working with Cesar N. on a regular basis.
How can I help you guys?
We'd like to talk to you about a farmer.
I know a lot of farmers.
We're looking for Cesar N.
Oh, Cesar. Sure, I know him. If you want, we can talk in my office. Not here in the street. You know how it is. Anyone might be listening.
We didn't expect the man to be so open. We followed him inside and continued filming with a hidden camera. In his office, the man picked up the phone to call Cesar, saying the farmer was on one of his properties. Cesar flat out refused to talk to us on camera, but he was willing to give us his cell phone number. Suddenly, another man entered the office. When he heard that we were asking about local farmers, he got angry.
I don't know what you want, but it sounds suspicious to me. If you want to drag us farmers here in the Amazon through the mud, I tell you this. I've been here for almost 40 years. Previous governments wanted us to make a profit here in the rainforest. No one rambled on about this nature conservation stuff. When we arrived, there were no roads, no bridges, no electricity. We've worked hard, we've created wealth, and now we're being made out to be bandits.
That large parts of the rainforest are now protected is incomprehensible to many here, and complicates the work of public prosecutor Igor Spindola.
There's a long history of colonization and conquest in the Amazon. Our democracy is still young, and attitudes towards land occupation are still the same as they've always been. Many people think this is land that anyone can just take.
Land grabs in the rainforest for personal profit? If the prosecutor's figures are correct, the illegal cattle in the Apitarewa protected area alone has a market value of more than 50 million euros. We drove to a local transshipment point for cattle transport and called Cesar N. We wanted to ask him who buys his illegal cattle.
Oh, Senor Cesar.
Good afternoon, Mr. Cesar. Everything okay with you?
I'm fine.
You're doing well?
What's this about?
Tudo bem? Então, Senor Cesar, a gente tá...
Cesar N. was willing to talk to us, but was clearly angry about the ongoing investigation. He admitted to keeping cattle in the protected area of Abattoirs for years. When he mentions one of his clients, we can't believe what we're hearing. It's a leading animal processing enterprise.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cesar.
Goodbye.
He admitted that he was selling cattle regularly to JBS, and after the lawsuit, his name was under embargo, so JBS could not buy the cattle anymore.
Okay, so JBS is really enforcing the embargo.
His name is under embargo, but not from his brother. Probably Charles is still selling cattle to JBS, and we know that their farms, are basically one big farm.
So basically the illegal scheme seems to continue, and JBS might still buy cattle from this family.
Probably.
For years now, Cesar N. and some of his family have been running a large-scale business selling cattle to JBS, one of the world's biggest animal processing companies, a fact confirmed by official transport documentation. Things were starting to come into focus. Farmers have been reselling cattle kept illegally in the protected area of Abattoirs to processing companies such as JBS. This is how these goods ultimately end up in international supply chains. JBS exports fresh meat, canned food, and cowhides all over the world. According to its own statements, the company has a slaughter capacity of around 30,000 cattle per day in Brazil alone. That's more than 10 million cattle per year, a head-spinning number. Despite its billion-dollar turnover, there's apparently no one at the company who can spare the time to talk to the press. All our attempts to contact the JBS headquarters in Sao Paulo, whether by email or in person, went nowhere. But we didn't give up. We paid an unannounced visit to the JBS slaughterhouse in Tucumã, one of the dozens of sites the company maintains in the Amazon. Cesar N's family have also delivered cattle here.
You think there's a chance that they let us in? Let's see.
After a few minutes, a manager appeared.
We're from German television and are making a film about the cattle business.
Send me your email. Make a formal request, and I'll see what I can do.
Are the hides processed into leather here?
No, it's just a slaughterhouse.
Where do the hides go?
To Marabá.
It was the same story at the JBS site in Marabá, 200 kilometers away. Here too, someone would only talk to us if we received approval from company headquarters in Sao Paulo. But the company continued to stonewall.
Basically there is no way to enter here.
We didn't get any further through official channels. But we did receive some exclusive material from environmental activists who managed to film with hidden cameras at JBS and other corporations in the region. Pretending to be businessmen, they were able to secretly record sensitive conversations with JBS executives.
The Europeans are always talking about trees, trees, trees. Germany, France, Norway, they all say, oh, we have to save the rainforest in the Amazon, but ultimately all they care about is their own economic interests.
After the manager had made his views on environmental issues clear to the supposed potential business partners, he became more specific and started talking about production figures and partnerships.
I have tanneries all over Brazil. We process 30,000 cowhides a day. 90% of them are exported.
90%? Where to?
The car industry, shoe factories, furniture companies, we supply them all and we can adapt to demand. For example, we deliver tens of thousands of cowhides per month to the automotive supplier Lear. You might know it. It makes leather seats for the big brands.
That's an explosive revelation, pointing to links between illegal deforestation and the international auto industry. We wanted to make sure it's all true, and got in touch with one of the activists involved in the undercover operation.
But why did you go undercover?
Companies deny their connections with deforestation in the Amazon. Going undercover enables us to meet and speak with the insiders. And through speaking with them in that capacity, we hoped we would learn what would really happen behind the screen.
Okay, and what did you find out?
We were able to connect the dots, the hidden parts of the supply chain between the slaughterhouses in the Amazon and the car seat manufacturers.
Official U.S. import data confirms that JBS's leather products are indeed shipped from Brazil to the U.S. on a large scale, usually via the port in Houston, Texas. In 2023 alone, the value of these goods was in the tens of millions of dollars. Almost all the animal hides end up with suppliers to the auto industry. Around 2/3 go to the Lear Corporation, which sells its leather car seats to automakers the world over, including Germany. But that doesn't mean they'll all be held accountable for the alleged environmental crimes in their supply chain. Germany's Supply Chain Act, passed in 2023, has been described as toothless by environmental organizations. But the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development argues the law has created a new control body holding corporations to account.
The Federal Office for Economic Affairs and Export Control has extensive rights in terms of controls, can inspect relevant files and companies. Complaints may be lodged by NGOs, trade unions or anyone affected, and it's important that complaints are filed because this draws attention to where the problems lie.
However, in its first year, the office failed to impose even a single penalty. In addition, those affected, like indigenous people, are not able to bring cases to court themselves.
The law does not include civil liability. This means those affected have no opportunity to sue directly. Giving those affected the possibility to assert their rights and claim damages is a very powerful way to force companies to truly respect human rights and environmental protection.
What's more, environmental organizations argue business lobbyists have succeeded in persuading German legislators to make further concessions. Companies don't need to check their entire supply chain, only their direct suppliers. This means, for example, that if an automaker's supplier confirms the origin of the leather is legitimate, then the job is considered done. The rest of the supply chain remains in the dark. Brussels is calling for stricter rules. Dutch Social Democrat Lara Wolters has been fighting for years to pass an EU-wide directive that would make companies more accountable.
The German law indeed says your first supplier, that's the one that you need to check, and then after that things are out of your control. What we try to say in the European law is if you could have known about a danger, if you could have known about an impact, then you need to do something about it, even if that impact, even if the harm is further down the supply chain.
In 2023, the EU passed a law on supply chains prohibiting the sale of goods that can be directly linked to deforestation. Lara Wolters wants the new EU supply chain law to go even further. It now has the support of most EU member states, despite massive pressure from industry representatives.
So in Brussels, the lobbying works. Here in the hallways, I mean, people can come in and talk to the people involved in this law. So that's myself, that's my colleagues from other groups. What we need to be very careful of here is that we have a balance between the industry telling us how the industry works in practice and those people who have much less of a voice. The reason we want this law is that the power imbalance has not been great for that last group. It's big companies, big multinationals who have gotten an advantage from that. And they have put often profits over people.
We had learned that illegal leather is being supplied to German automakers. But could we find out in which makes and models the material is installed? We headed to the deep south of the US to visit one of the many sites owned by automotive supplier Lear. But the company was no more willing to share information than its Brazilian business partners. All our attempts to talk to someone went nowhere. Security guards ordered us to leave the premises. Back at the hotel, we got in touch with a well-known supply chain expert. He too has complained that companies do not make their supply chains transparent.
There is no requirement legally on transparency. Nothing. So American companies do not share very much on their website with regard to what's happening in the supply chain.
Do you sometimes feel frustrated about all of this?
I teach a class here on this entire subject, and the students get a little depressed at the end of the semester. It makes you cynical because companies claim a lot, but they don't back up their claims with data. Supply chains are complex, and most companies have not traced back the entire supply chain. It doesn't mean that they cannot, but they need to make the effort.
With Lear refusing to talk to us, we continued to follow our leads on our own. Judging by the flags outside the building, BMW is one of the company's major customers. The German luxury automaker's largest plant is only 10 minutes away in Spartanburg. We asked for an appointment. It turned out BMW was much more willing to talk to us than the other companies. The CEO of the plant agreed to talk to us about sustainability and supply chains.
We are the largest car exporter here in the US. 60% of the more than 400,000 vehicles manufactured here every year are sent overseas. It goes without saying that sustainability is one of the core principles of our operations and actions.
BMW made in the USA. 1,500 luxury cars roll off the assembly line here every day, some destined for Germany. Most of these SUVs have leather upholstery. The expensive material is used on panels, the steering wheel, and the seats. Might this leather originate from areas in the Amazon subject to illegal deforestation? We wanted to know from the CEO what role risks to the environment play in the company's supply chains. At this point, his responses became vague.
Supply chains transparency is key for us, and we are committed to this and have the corresponding transparency and focus.
The friendly PR team asked us to direct more specific questions to company headquarters in Munich. However, despite the claims of full transparency, our interview request was turned down. We continued our research in a roadside restaurant, coming across confidential market analyses and video materials. They proved that Lear supplies genuine leather seats on a large scale to BMW plants all over the world. Other leading German car manufacturers, such as Mercedes and Volkswagen, are also involved. We had found the final pieces in the supply chain puzzle. Criminal activity is destroying the Amazon's rainforest. Products from cattle kept there illegally end up on the world market. The path of dirty goods leads along convoluted supply chains featuring animal processing and automotive supply companies as well as top automakers. At the very end of the chain, consumers in Germany who unwittingly bear some responsibility for what's happening in the Amazon. We emailed several German luxury car makers, confronting them with our research, and then waited for a response. We returned to Germany, to the last link in the supply chain, a luxury car dealership. Richard Wagner has been voted BMW Dealer of the Year several times. He knows exactly what customers are looking for in their vehicles.
A car is still a status symbol. Customers want to show what they can afford. For some, it's very important that the leather feels pleasant and that the material is natural. For reasons of principle, others absolutely want the vegan option.
BMW has been offering completely vegan interiors, fitted with so-called vegan leather since 2023. But this is still more of a niche product.
This is real leather. Feel that texture. And then we have imitation leather. It's also available in both colors. Genuine leather that is animal leather, and this is a more sustainable solution.
Customer Guido Richer has always been a fan of classic leather.
This is all real leather. Napa leather. It feels wonderful, of course.
High quality material, but possibly of dubious origin.
I've never thought about where the leather comes from. I assume that it was produced legally and didn't come from anywhere that's endangered. If you've now found out that it does, then I would want someone to tell me that, of course.
It's a wish Managing Director Richard Wagner has not heard for the first time.
We need to do some explaining sometimes and are then forced to find the right information ourselves, and quickly. But there is still a long way to go in terms of transparency.
A clear demand to BMW headquarters, which responded to our query shortly afterwards. In recent years, we have continuously reduced our purchases of leather from South America. We have used the media coverage as an opportunity to enter into in-depth bilateral exchange with affected suppliers. Bilateral exchange? Environmental investigator Alexander von Bismarck wants companies to introduce strict controls of their entire supply chain.
It's incredibly unfair that people in the middle of the supply chain don't take responsibility. But I believe we really do have people on our side, because people don't want to be complicit in these crimes.
Meanwhile, illegal deforestation is continuing. Every day, an area the size of 5,000 soccer fields is lost in the Amazon. The people whose lives are directly impacted can't stand up to this illegal activity on their own. They can only hope that 10,000 kilometers away, at the other end of the supply chain, people will start to take responsibility.
The forest is only preserved around the village. Beyond it, everything has been destroyed. But we will not stop fighting for our forest. It's vital for our children's future, and also the future of the entire planet.
E cuidar também do nosso planeta.